This is my Singer Model 66-1 Red Eye in a treadle cabinet, and I am using it today to sew a band on my bedroll mat section. And these are great old machines, and I don't think people appreciate all the time how wonderful these old machines really are. They're cast iron. There's very few moving parts and very little things that can break. Now, this one doesn't have zigzag. It doesn't have reverse. You actually would have to turn the fabric around and come in the other direction. But what it does have is a hand crank, and it also has a treadle. So, with this machine, in this cabinet, you can either treadle it or you can hand crank it. These machines are very basic. If you need to do straight stitch sewing, then this is the machine for you, because once you get going with the treadle, they're so powerful because of the way they're set up. There's a leather belt on the treadle. These are just wonderful machines to use. They obviously don't take any electricity. You can use them at any time, anywhere, without needing a plug nearby. They're very pretty. This one has pretty good decals left on it. I think this one's from 1916. They really are simply a wonderful machine to use. I'm going to set the camera down off to the side and see if we can get a view of, like that, of me just treadling it. You can hear the cadence of the treadle. Very simple to use. They're very fast. They're very powerful. Now this being the Model 66-1 is what they call a back clamping machine. And by that, they mean that any attachments that you have to attach from the back. This little screw back here, and I hope that this little screw is how you attach the presser foot. This machine that I have actually did come with a set of back clamping attachments. They can be difficult to find. The Model 66-1 is the only one that has back clamping attachments. All the other Model 66s went to side clamping, where they attach over here, and you can use a lot more easily found side clamping attachments. I wanted to show you, this is the hand wheel on the 66-1 Red Eye. You always move the hand wheel toward you. When you have a hand crank on there, you can see the crank moves away from you, but the wheel moves toward you. And down here, you can see those are my feet on the treadle pedal. Because I have a hand crank on this machine, if I want, I can start it with the hand crank. The hand crank will move the belt, which you can see on the right there. The pedal starts to move, and then you can just pick up on that action. And I use one foot on one corner and one foot on the other corner, because that's the easiest way to just keep the pedal going. And it's so relaxing, it's amazing. This particular project is a little bit annoying. The mat band that I'm sewing onto the mat is woven, and the mat is woven. I wove those with backstrap looms. And so they're a little bit thick, they're uneven. It's not like you're sewing muslin or linen or anything like that. And what's happening is the presser foot that's on here will catch threads. And so you have to stop, you have to adjust it. But that's really no different than any of the more modern machines that I've used. But let me get going again. And I'm really not trying to keep that seam straight while I'm doing this. But you can see how it just very easily moves the fabric right through. This is pretty thick. It's about a little over a quarter of an inch between the two of them, almost a half an inch thick. And for quilting, where you have a thick batting usually, but you have two smooth fabrics, these machines are wonderful. They just move right along. This type of roughly woven fabric is a pain to work with on any sewing machine. When you have nice fabric and nice batting, then this machine just flies through it. Now I've come to the end of that seam, and so what I've done is I'm just going to flip it around, and I'm just going to sew back this way a little bit, which would normally be your reverse action on a more modern machine. I'm actually going to use the hand crank so I can also hold the camera. And there I've backstitched on that seam. My bobbin just ran out, so this might be a good time to show you how to wind a bobbin. This is a regular drop-in bobbin. I had said earlier this was a 1916 Red Eye. It's actually from 1919. It's a drop-in bobbin. I believe it will take even the modern version of the Class 66 drop-in bobbins. The older ones seem to work just a little bit better. They're a little bit curved on the top that you might be able to see there. There's a little lever you can push that pushes it out. The slide plate goes to the left, which is different from like a Model 15 where the slide plate is actually vertical next to the needle. The bobbin winder is over here, and what you want to do is the bobbin will fit on the winder like that. This one seems to be a little tight. You have to get it all the way in. There you go. And so you want to push it over so that it lines up with the thread guide right here. And this lever, the light's a little dim, but this lever right behind it, which looks like a type of shoe, and that will fit into the bobbin and hold the thread in place as it winds. I was going to try and increase the exposure there so that you could see better the bobbin winder area, but I can't seem to do that with this on video mode. So what you want to do is take your thread, it goes through the thread guide above the tension knob. You bring it over here. Some machines have another thread guide here. This one doesn't. That's kind of a better view of the bobbin winder. There's a thread guide here, a thread guide here, and the bobbin is there. Now what you want to do when you wind a bobbin is have the thread come from the inside of the bobbin to the outside, and that's what I'm going to do now. And you can see what I've done is inserted the thread from the inside of the bobbin. And on the older vintage bobbins, there's one hole. On the Class 15 bobbins, which are for a 15 machine, those have several holes. But I think on most of the Class 66 bobbins, there's one hole. So the thread is coming from the inside to the outside. The thread that comes from the spool will go into the two thread guides, one right there and one just below it, like that. And then what you have to do on these machines is you need to push the bobbin winder down. Here's a little more light. Because what it's going to do is engage with the hand wheel. To do that, the shoe moves forward and holds the bobbin in place. And on this particular machine, the shoe is just a little bit off, and if the bobbin isn't on there completely tightly. Okay, I'm not sure if that recorded this correctly or not. This, for me to explain again, on this brass fitting, which is on the bobbin winder itself, on the model 66-1, there is a little pin, and that pin has to fit into the one hole on either side of your bobbin. The thread goes from the inside of the bobbin to the outside, and then the thread going to the spool goes into the two thread guides, like that. And then you're going to hold this loose thread, and when the bobbin starts to wind, until the thread gets caught on the bobbin. Now, the other thing you have to do to wind the bobbin is over here on the end, you have to loosen, and I don't know if I can do this with one hand, you have to loosen the clutch wheel on the hand wheel. You turn it toward you to loosen it. And what that does is disengage the needle. So you've pushed your bobbin bars down. So you have this little arm comes down, holds the shoe in place, which holds the bobbin in place. You have your thread guide, your thread going through your thread guides. You've disengaged the clutch wheel, and now I can use the hand crank because I have a hand crank. What will happen is the needle should be disengaged, and as you turn the wheel, your bobbin will wind. Now I'm doing this by hand, and I'm not sure if you can see it. There's better light, but by turning the hand wheel, either with the treadle, I've actually disengaged the hand crank, although I didn't have to. For some reason my belt's really tight right now, and this is a rubber wheel that hits the hand wheel, and that's very tight on this machine. So it's actually taking a little bit of effort to get the bobbin to wind without the belt slipping. You can see the belt moving, but the hand wheel is not moving because the belt is slipping. So I think in my case it's because this rubber wheel is really tight to the hand wheel, which is causing more friction. And you know, I might be able to pull it up a little bit, but it doesn't seem to want to move. So I'm just going to go ahead and wind this bobbin by hand, and if I can get the belt to engage a little easier, I will. But at least you can see the mechanism of how the bobbin winder works on this machine. On the bobbin winder, right above it, mine happens to be a little bit tight, and so it's causing too much friction against the hand wheel, and the belt is slipping. There are two screws that hold the arm and the bobbin winder to the belt guard. This one right here is an adjustment screw, so you can loosen that screw a little bit, just release a slight amount of tension on the bobbin winder, and then tighten the screw back up again, and reset your bobbin winder to work as smoothly as possible with the right amount of friction against the hand wheel when you're treadling. For some reason, when I disengage the hand crank, it works better. I don't remember that with the hand crank engaged, for some reason it's catching the clutch and it's making the needle move. So if you have both a treadle and a hand crank on your machine, I've disengaged the hand crank while I'm winding the bobbin. Okay, I've put the bobbin back in. I've dropped it in. There's one little notch there that you put the thread under. Pull it up to the other notch. Have the thread come through the slide plate in that larger notch, like that. rethread the machine, and then pull up the bobbin thread once the needle is threaded. When you thread this machine, you come from the spool through the thread guide here. You go right in between the two discs that each curve outward on the tension knob, and bring the thread up and catch it in the spring that's right there. You then come back out of that spring, and you go under this metal bar, and that creates the tension for the thread. You then go up to the thread holder on the needle bar, right there. There is a thread guide on the faceplate, and then another thread guide on the actual needle bar. And on different Singer models, the two things you have to be aware of is that your needle is in correctly and which way they thread. On this machine, which is the 66-1, the thread goes into the needle from the left to the right. On other models, such as the 201, I'm pretty sure the 221, they thread from the right to the left. So you just have to make sure, and usually wherever your thread guide is, this thread guide is on the left-hand side of the needle. And so I can kind of make a good guess that it's going to go from the left to the right. Your manual would obviously tell you how to thread it, but they're very easy to thread. And once you get through the tension discs, you can see there are two discs there, and the thread goes in the middle of them, and then up through, there's a little spring right there. I've brought a light over to the machine so I can better show you the adjustment on the bobbin winder. That was really frustrating to have to wind a bobbin in the middle of a project and have the bobbin rubber tire be too tight to the hand wheel. Most of the time, 99% of the time, the little black iron Singer screwdrivers work for everything. It didn't want to move this screw that I needed to move, and I didn't want to strip the screw. I ended up using a nail file to just go over here and loosen that screw. And you have about a quarter of an inch of leeway either way. Right now the bobbin winder is disengaged, and you can see that it'll move up and down, and you can also see how the bracket that goes around that screw moves back and forth. Now, when I was just winding a bobbin a moment ago, it was about there. What I want to do is move it up just a little bit so that when I engage the bobbin winder, which would be by pushing the arm down. It's kind of hard to do it when the screw is loose. So I'll have to wait. You have to gauge exactly. I think it needs to be about there. I'll tighten the screw, engage the bobbin, and see if it works a little bit more freely. These types of adjustments, once they're made, you don't really have to do this all the time. I haven't used this machine, I guess, in a while, and last time I used it, I didn't have a problem with the bobbin or the bobbin winder. I usually wind them very quickly. So this is the type of thing you might run into on an antique machine, but it's a matter of having a good screwdriver for the right screw and making a very simple adjustment. These are so easy to work on yourself simply because they're very simple in the way that they work. Much different from today's computerized machines, which you kind of, you know, if it breaks, it breaks, and you have to take it in for a repair. These antique machines, you can do almost everything yourself, I think, as far as maintenance. So I will go ahead and adjust this bobbin winder, and the next time I'm sewing with this machine, I won't get frustrated in the middle of the project when I need to wind a bobbin. That's much closer to how the bobbin winder is supposed to work. You can see by the bobbin moving that it is turning. You could still use just another little adjustment, but it should never drag the way it was dragging before with the belt slipping like it was. And that is it, winding the bobbin correctly. I'm not winding one, I don't have any thread on there, but I'm using the treadle pedal to power the bobbin winder, and the bobbin is moving smoothly, and that would wind the bobbin very quickly.